The unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see it, we can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. Well, nice to see you all. So what I'd like to talk about today, which is not rocket science or earth-shaking, but it's about how in Buddhist practice we work with our tendencies to follow our preferences. You know, we tend to have preferences as human beings. Okay, preferences in themselves are not bad or evil. We don't really have those concepts in Buddhism. They're just something that, another thing we have in the mix that we need to deal with. Okay? And as we all know, choices are a daily part of our lives. That's what it's about. We've got to make choices. Okay? Sometimes it doesn't matter what choice we make. They're equally valid, or it just doesn't matter. So if any of you are familiar with Yogi Berra said when giving instructions to get to his house, he said, when you come to the fork in the road, take it. well, the point was that it didn't matter which road you took because they both went to his house, and I presume in a fairly equal amount of time. So it didn't matter. It's brilliant. It didn't matter. Okay. Whether we like coffee or tea, I mean, it's not a big problem. It's a preference, or maybe, it's what works for us, but it's not a big problem. Sometimes, though, with choices, we have a strong preference overly based on our likes and dislikes. And I'd go so far to say is based on clinging and attachment. This is where a problem starts to arise. Okay? So we have these things going on in our mind that says, I have to have this, I don't want that, my day will be spoiled if I don't get this, or I'm not able to do that, I don't want to work with that person, I can't stand her or him. I mean, we know the scenario here. And these are the kind of things that when we attach to these preferences, some of you could call opinions, we actually get an ever-growing self as a consequence. And in Buddhism, we're trying not to destroy the self, but rather loosen the grip on the self. That's the problem. It's the grip. This is who I am, this is what I do, and get out of my way. I'm a person who likes these things and does these things, and I don't do those things. Okay? When we step into Buddhist training, pretty soon we start to question whether this is a good way to be. Okay? Because Buddhism is about that there is suffering and that there is a way out from suffering. There is a release from suffering. This is the basic thing that the Buddha taught. And the second noble truth is about the cause of suffering. Okay? So first noble truth being suffering, second noble truth being the cause of suffering. And the Buddhists saw clearly that it was craving, clinging, attachment, holding on and pushing away that causes suffering. As we know, that the basis of our meditation practice is not to hold on or push away. Okay? So that's a clue. You and I don't create all the conditions of our lives. Sometimes we're in the driver's seat, okay, and we're able to create conditions that work, change conditions that don't? Wonderful. Some conditions we can influence, and some conditions we just have to live with. We're just one small person in this immense universe. And so there's all these other contributing conditions going on all the time. Sometimes things are just as they are. Okay? Try as we might, we can't steer them. We can't steer them the way we prefer. We just have to hold on. And as we know, life is moving, changing. It's not fixed. Okay? We cannot stop the flow, but we can flow with it. It's a choice. If we try to go against this, in other words, if we try to fix things, if we try to deny that they're changing, we just cause suffering for ourselves and sometimes for others. So the question is, how can we live in harmony with the changing landscape in which our preferences sometimes lead to suffering? What can we do? Because that's the thing. It isn't just staring at a wall and singing the praises of the Buddha. It's what can we do about the suffering in our life? How can we change it? Well, first we have to recognize that maybe there is a problem with our clinging preferences, because we human beings have an extraordinary capacity for denial. We just do not, it's not there. It's not there, It's not me. It must be them. Well, it is there. And it's us. Okay? Once we realize that we're getting caught up in our preferences, we can look into what might be really going on. So, again, we have to accept it, and then we can look into it. And then we can begin to question our preferences. Why is it that I'm always so attached to this? Why is it that I avoid that, like the plague? It's interesting here, when you go to kitchen cleanup, you report to this is not the military, but you report to the person in charge. You say, how can I help? And you just get assigned a job. It may not be your preference. You might not like cleaning counters or whatever. You might want to wash the dishes, but we do all kinds of things. And I mean, I've seen that as a good mirror for my preferences after 42 years here, and I still see that, mirror, and, well, I'm a slow learner. So if we can accept it and begin to look into it, then we can also challenge it, okay? And make different choices, possibly. If something is not really beneficial for ourselves and others, well, that's a thing to work on and see a better alternative. Live in a way that does something about that. Yeah, and maybe we can do something different, not just what we prefer. It's actually, when we really look at it, it's quite humorous, some of it, what our preferences are, because what's the basis? Well, I mean, sometimes there's a basis, but sometimes it's just a preference. It's just an opinion. And the dots don't connect, so then we can say, oh, well, I don't have to do that. Yeah, the real question for these many things that come up in our life is, what is good to do? Not, what do I prefer? It really helps to get the I out of the matter and just look at what needs doing. Okay? Just take the I and you put it over there and you have a look. And it's amazing what we see. If we always do what we prefer, we miss out on opportunities to extend and expand who we are. Because really, who are we? And if we're not extending and expanding, well, maybe we're stuck. Because, in little ways, there's always something more. And just doing what we prefer is a way of trying to protect the self, and it doesn't work. Try as we might, it doesn't work. Some of you might remember the Simon Garfunkel song, I Am an Island. Okay? Well, they go on and on about how a rock feels no pain, an island never cries. I mean, and it's, what's the word, satirical? It's not, they're not saying this is a good thing. They're actually pointing out that it doesn't work. Human beings cannot be a rock or an island. Our nature is to live with others. There's a rare hermit amongst us, but it's really rare. But even the hermits, especially if they've learned something, help others. And walls and hardness and isolation don't bring security. They just don't. Over preferred preferences don't aid us in the letting go process, which is really basic to our practice. Let it go. Good, bad, let it go. It's gone. We learn from it. We can cherish it or wish we didn't do it, but we also have to learn from it and let it go. So our preferred preferences just create a bigger, tighter self. And that's a sure recipe for dukkha, sure recipe for suffering. So don't get me wrong here. It's not a problem that we have things that we like to do. We don't have to now go around and say, oh, I like that, so I can't do it. I have to do the thing I don't like. No. It's okay that we like to do things. It's okay that we like to eat certain things. It's okay that there are people that we like to be with. That's all okay. Okay? The thing is, though, we can't always have these things, the things that we like. And what happens when we don't? Okay? When we're faced with that we find difficult, that we don't like, what do we do then? Okay, so again, for some choices in life, the alternatives are both valid, or whatever there are, six alternatives. They're all, it doesn't matter either way. I mean, we know this. And that's fine. But life is also made up of little choices, okay? The big ones just come along every once in a while. There's these little choices all the time that are molding who we are. Okay? They're casting this mold by what we do with these little events that occur all throughout the day. And the way that we work with small choices is going to affect the bigger ones that come along. Remember, Master Jiyu used to say about life that it's all a dummy run for death. That as you work on yourself, you do the practice, that's really going to help at that moment, because you'll have something there that's really strong. I found it interesting that if we do the things that we avoid all the time, we give them a try, well, sometimes we find, well, that's not so bad, we might even find that we enjoy it. I think preferences will always arise in our life, in our mind. Okay? And as the Buddha said, the mind is the forerunner of everything. Okay? So things are arising there all the time. Not a problem. It's not that we have to come to a place where no preferences ever arise. Good luck. I don't think you're going to find that place. What's important is what we do with the preferences that arise. And if we're willing to honestly look into the consequences, because we all have vast experience and suffering, and if we honestly look at it, we get some clues as to what causes what. Okay, and if we honestly look into it, we can get insight into whether our choices are beneficial to ourselves and other beings, or if they're harmful. And do we really want to do things that are harmful? I think we want to do things that are beneficial. And the thing is, we can make a mess of it. There's karmic consequences, and we can change. And there's karmic consequences. We can't deny that, but we have the capacity to change. So when I was in high school, we had to memorize a lot of poetry, Shakespeare, a lot of the English poets, a lot of the American poets. I didn't always do very good at it, but there's one poem that just has stuck with me throughout all the years, and I only remember the beginning now, so I've gotten written out, and I think it's a very Buddhist poem and kind of apropos of what some of the things I'm trying to say. And the poem is by Robert Frost, and it's called "The Road Not Taken," and I'll read it to you. And I'm not a really good dramatic reader, so bear with me. Okay. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveler, long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could. Then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay, and leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day. Yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. So I think it's a very Buddhist poem. Personally, I know of no better tools to help me in discerning my choices and in aiding me to let go of my unneeded preferences than meditation, precepts, and daily practice. Okay? And of course, in all those is the Buddha's teaching. And meditation and precepts are not to be put on a shelf and admired. So, there's some special time of day, and then we just go live life. Actually, they're to be integrated into our daily life. And they're really for the nitty-gritty of our everyday life. And they serve us well. Thank you.